Hello, today I will be reading Chapter 10 of Takeout by Margaret Maron. No ID on our second victim, Tilly said as Sigrid came out of her office with a cup of black coffee on Friday morning. But we may be close. A news vendor in the area recognized the picture, but didn't know his name or anything about him except that he buys Variety every week. Variety, said Hentz, Ninth and 43rd. That's right in the theater district, which could mean he's connected with show business, Elaine Albee said. But that's not going to help us without a name. We'll get it, Tilly said confidently. Just a matter of time. Till then, we concentrate on Mattie Mouton, Sigrid said. Hence, call Miss Jennings. Find out when that overhauled woman's due back. And I want to talk to Charlotte Randolph. Randolph told us that she didn't recognize either man, said Jim Lowry as he came back to his desk with two steaming mugs of coffee and handed one to Albie. But those were the first pictures we took of them, she reminded him. Maybe it will jog her memory to see ones with her eyes open. The morning briefing continued with a report from Gonzalez and Jackson, the two newest members of their team. We should finish up the paperwork on that domestic stabbing tomorrow, said Jackson. The DA will knock it down to manslaughter if he'll confess. And will he? Sigrid asked. Gonzalez handed her a picture of two frightened children. The boy's 5, the girl's 7. They saw him do it. He doesn't want to put them on the witness stand. His sister says she'll take them in. Poor kids, Dina Urbanska said softly. 3 days since those bodies had been found, yet they still had no identity for the second body. Sigrid knew she should update Captain McKinnon on their meager progress, but it was difficult to concentrate on the case while still reeling from the news that Newman might have had a son. Had he known? Had he visited his old mistress? Had a coherent to talk with her? Learned about their son? Frustrated, she pushed back from her desk and fished a puzzle ring out of the bowl that held her collection. Fitting the circlets into an unified band usually helped her to focus, but not today. She frowned when the phone interrupted the alternate scenarios she was piecing together in her head, and she was not happy to hear Marcus Livingston's voice on the line. I understand Bunchak told you about Vincent Haas? Yes. Livingston waited for her to say more. The silence stretched between them until the attorney said, Hester Kuhn sent him to me. He just left. Is he Newman's son, Marcus? I honestly can't say. He has a birth certificate, but that alone doesn't prove anything to me. He doesn't particularly look like Oscar, and he has nothing more than the letter his mother left. His adoptive mother. Did you know about Leela Nagy? Never heard her name until Bunchak called. Oscar didn't mention her to me, and I'm sure he would have if he'd known there was a child. I gather that Rudy Godfrey confirms that the dates are right. Yes, Sigrid said, back to monosyllables again. Let me reassure you that even if he proves to be who he says he is, Sigrid, he has no real claim on Oscar's estate. I've never had one of my wills successfully contested. There's always a first, Marcus. Doesn't he plan to contest? Probably. It's a lot of money. He says that isn't his primary concern. But it's probably his secondary. Exactly. If he really is Newman's son, though, let's wait about crossing that bridge. A, a pity my Miss Bales is so efficient. She tells me the cleaning crew removed all his personal effects a month ago. I don't suppose you know. After hanging up the phone, Livingston called for Oscar Newman's file, but he didn't immediately see what he was looking for. I clipped it to his death certificate, said his secretary. Shall I call them and see what I can find out? Getting the information he wanted would probably mean listening to hours of execrable elevator music broken by a chirpy, "Please continue to hold. Your call is very important to us." "Thank you, Miss Bales," he said. "That would be most helpful." The manager of the market on 10th Avenue studied the flyer the policeman had handed him and shook his head. "Sorry, I don't know him." "What's he done?" "Died," said the officer, "with no ID on him." "Yeah? Too bad. I'll stick this on our board over there by the door. Maybe someone will recognize him." "He bought a bottle of aspirin over a week ago?" asked the clerk at the Duane Reade on 9th Avenue. He gestured out at the crowded store. "And you expect me to remember him? Give me a break." "You were right, Charlotte," Grace Landers said. "Mom did have some pictures that Grandma took when you went to Rome, but those polyps removed, you may not be able to use any of them. I'm afraid they're not very flattering." Charlotte Randolph watched her sister's granddaughter unzip a flat leather envelope and dump several dozen snapshots onto the glass top table. It had been her sister's first trip abroad, and she had snapped roll after roll of film with her Brownie camera. St. Peter's, the Colosseum, the Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps. And even though Charlotte had expressively forbidden Daisy to take pictures of her, there she was, more than 40 years younger, and caught in candid shots that were embarrassingly awful. "Mom says that's when Grandma started putting on the pounds." "I'm afraid we both did," said Charlotte, grimacing at a particularly unattractive view of her round face and pudgy waistline. "All that pasta. Took me 6 months to get back to singing shape." "Too bad she didn't follow your example," said Grace, who did not carry an extra ounce on her slender body. "She didn't have the same incentive," Charlotte said complacently, "but it was good of her to come with me and keep me from overdoing. When I was in rehab, my voice therapist said that the extra weight would help keep my vocal cords flexible while I recovered. It was the first time I'd had a real rest since joining the Met, and a side benefit was that I came back fluent in Italian, which was a huge help for some of my roles." As Charlotte sorted through the scattered pictures, separating the purely tourist shots from those that might make it into the book, she paused and said, "Could you make us a cup of tea, darling? Just talking about my vocal cords have dried them out." Of course, the real kitchen was downstairs in the basement, but here on the first floor, where she entertained, mirrored panels concealed a butler's pantry that had a wet bar, hot plate, a microwave oven, and everything needed for making hot or cold drinks. As Grace disappeared behind the mirrors, Charlotte Randolph quickly plucked 4 of the most unflattering pictures from the pile and tucked them into the pocket of her robe. More loose ends to be tidied away. If this book made as big a splash as her editor predicted, she would once again be in the public eye, and who knew where reporters would go poking. "You've papered that neighborhood with flyers?" McKinnon asked, when they met late that afternoon. "And it's on television, right?" "Yes, sir," Sigurd said. "Then I don't see what else you can do to ID him till someone comes forward." He noticed the dark rings under her eyes. "You okay?" "Just frustrated," she said with a wan smile. "It'll come," he said. "It always does, doesn't it?" Except when it doesn't, Sigurd thought as she walked down to her own office. On the other hand, she and her team only had one unsolved case on their book. A young woman found burned in a dumpster. Her nude body had been spread-eagled over several cardboard boxes that were soaked in gasoline, then set on fire. By the time she was found, her body was so badly charred that there was almost nothing left to help identify her, aside from the fact that she'd had perfect teeth without even a single filling. Caucasian, average height, blue eyes, brown hair, approximately 125 pounds. "Probably new to the city," Tilly said when no missing person report came close to matching what they could say about her. "She could have been from anywhere. Surely someone could put a name to their second victim." "Whole life research," said a pleasant voice on the other end of the call. "Dr. Gustav Bohr, please," said Miss Bales. "May I ask who's calling?" "Marcus Livingston's law office." "And this is in reference to—" "Mr. Livingston arranged a donation to your institution last year. Dr. Bohr was his contact there. Organs or whole body?" "Whole body. One moment, please." The taped music had barely begun to play when a male voice said, "Dr. Bohr here." Mrs. Bale pressed the intercom button on her desk. "Dr. Bohr's on line 2, Mr. Livingston." In his office, her employer took a deep breath and said, "Dr. Bohr, this is Marcus Livingston. I hope you can help me." It took several minutes to explain precisely what it was he wanted and why. There was a moment of silence, and then the doctor said, "This is highly irregular, Mr. Livingston. The remains would have been cremated within 6 weeks." "I understand, sir, but I was hoping some of the tissues might still be available." "That is, of course, a possibility. But locating them?" Another pause. "Let me make some inquiries. It might take some time, but give me your number and I'll get back to you." At midnight, Janice Jennings put aside the book she was reading and walked out to the common room that served as a lounge for her tenants. It was empty and the rest of the house was quiet. Only one of her tenants was booked to have a client spend the night with her, a widower who still grieved for the wife he'd lost last year. She switched off all the lights except for one dim bulb in the entryway. As she started to throw the deadbolt on the front door, a key turned in the lock and a woman entered, pulling a small roller bag. Late 30s, her auburn hair was skinned back from her strong face, and she was casually dressed, in jeans and a beige linen jacket. "Peg?" "Whoa," the woman said. "You startled me. I thought everyone would be in bed." "You're back early," her landlady said. "How's your mother?" "Fine now, knock wood. It wasn't a full-blown stroke. What the doctor called a love pat from God. No after effects, thank goodness. So I called Miss Kirkland and told her she could come tomorrow after all." She turned the deadbolt and moved past Jennings toward the stair. "Anything happen while I was gone?" "I'm afraid so. Remember Matty Mouton? He was found dead Wednesday morning." "Oh no, what happened? Overdose?" "I'm not sure, but I gather they're treating it as a suspicious death. The police were here and they want to talk to you. They'll be back on Monday to hear if Matty told you anything that would help them. If he had any enemies or anything." "I'll talk to them," Peg Overhold said, "though it probably won't help them much. His witchy godmother didn't want him back in her life, but it's not like he thought she'd kill him or anything." "You sure about that?" They both laughed and said goodnight. And that is the end of chapter 10, and I will see you again tomorrow for chapter 11. And as always, Have a wonderful rest of your day.